Marten Hoyle, thank you for joining me again here on the Connecting podcast.
Thank you
I
very
know,
much for having me.
I know, of course, you have some projects coming up, one of which will be published very soon. Please remind the listeners about that one.
Yeah, the project it's actually a poetry trilogy called Symphoniya de Toska, and the first book is coming out on January 19th from Wheel Song Books.
And the excerpts you'll be reading today, are they all from part one?
Four of them are from part one. I didn't want to do an odd number from the book, so I threw one in there that was kind of a practice number in preparation for the new collection that I just started working on the other day.
So if you'd like to begin, just please give us the title and share with us your work.
Well, I want to warn you, I'm not much for a recitation type person. I know that's probably just, I think, something that a lot of people would say. I do have a theater background, but my recitals aren't nearly as good as other people's. So the first one is called Ceremony, and it's from part one of the first book. Ceremony. In the secret ceremony I still hold in my heart, you look so beautiful on the day that follows forever. You have not disappeared from the star that died inside the heavens that guide you. Such light may never fade, though now merely a memory to the angels so far away. And you still cast a shadow over the echoes of all that died, amid the weeping that took the blame, the trespass of the love you could not hold. What was my doing I cannot deny, for you bore the burden in suffocation, quietly suffering the weight of my illusion. Was this a vision wrapping its arms around me? I wanted to feel so warm when I woke up. From what dreams the idea casts over me. I wanted to see a gorgeous truth lying beside me. When I reached into the dark, when you should lie, nothing remained, save for the naked moon. And I wondered, as your parting words haunted me, how could you deceive me with such honesty? And still I believe in what we never were. I'm still waiting for the door to open, for you to say that all was not in vain. I still dream of waking next to you. Perhaps I dream of never waking again, to stay in that secret place where our hearts are made one.
Thank you. Can you tell me who the you is in this project?
No.
Can you tell me how they fit into your life?
Well, it was a former lover, obviously. That really inspired the actions of this person, inspired the bulk of the trilogy.
Okay. Anything else to share about the development of this one?
Not so dim in my mind. I've said times. I'm sure I don't know if you know this. I've written before about my poems. I got this from George Carlin. Actually, I listened to an interview of his, and they said, "Well, how do you come up with new material?" And he said, "I just drop everything after the HBO special, and start working on new stuff." That's the same idea that I kind of adopt, and I have very dim memories of what was going on in my mind when I was working on the pieces because I'm always working on a new one. So, but that one, I'm not sure exactly what was going through my mind when I wrote that one. That memory is pretty dim.
Okay. Would you like to move on to number two?
Yeah, number two. Number two is also from part one. The first two are from part one. The second two are from part two. This one's called For the First Time. Who are you? Why do you wear this face such as is worn by a stranger? I am nobody to the eyes once bent upon me, though they still seem full of light in my memories of so long ago that it seems like yesterday when you looked at me for the first time. Who are you? I still remember the face you wore with a smile. I have not seen you in so long while you have been next to me. For all the days of my life, it seems, when the sunshine was above our heads, we cast no shadows as we lay before the early coming of the eventide. Skies so pale as the tides between the dusk and dawn of autumn when we walk together for the first time. I can't see you, though you surround me. I can't hear the music, though you are singing. You are somewhere else in my presence. Feel the absence in the eyes I never knew when they pierce the spaces through me. What do you see when you mirror me? When our eyes meet, who are the others? What did you do that you never would do for me? Am I just as guilty as what now stands before me, the outsider I view in your skin for the first time?
If I may, is this the very same you addressed in the first one?
Yeah. The whole trilogy essentially is about the same person.
Okay.
A little bit, maybe a little obsessive, but I like to think it's better than Adele.
And how many poems total are written for
I
these?
don't know. I never counted. I mean, I was writing in such a fever with this trilogy to just get through the whole thing. I had support from friends and family making sure that I was doing okay and everything. But I had to write as obsessively as possible to get through it because I had no real help.
Right.
That poem, I mean, I think that just to my mind, from what I do remember, and I think a lot of people run into this, the person that you're sitting next to is suddenly so distant after a while, so far away from you. So,
What other hardships did you have in this process of writing?
well, I've always suffered from suicidal ideation as it is with my schizoaffective disorder. And so the whole trilogy is centered tremendously around the around suicide. You know, there was kind of the temptation to do that during this whole process. And this my mentor Joachim Loetka, when I first met him, told me that art is a survival strategy, and I learned that writing this trilogy.
Gotcha.
Because if I had not written this trilogy, I would either be insane or dead right now. I probably am insane, but I mean I would be clinically insane. The next poem is a little bit different. This is from part 2 of the first book. It's called Afterlives. What is this now that I have closed my eyes? My tears birth a Stygian flood. What lights have gathered beyond the waves? These winds bearing the sighs of promises we may have kept are weeping with souls. And from amid the cries you come to my side. Such lament as you sing wakens an unknown pain. Be not silent, sing your woes that I may ache, as with life, fragile and dreaming. Such woe as binds your fetters to my own. Had we met when I was alive, I may have lived forever. Now too late, there is eternity. What are we to become in this ever after, in a second death, waiting beyond our afterlives? My heart seems pierced in you with melody. In the tuned silence, there is a sudden song that breathes through your voice in the dark. I never knew I could seek such a rose as withers on your still and silent breast. Oh, to be born again, forbidden by time, to taste of such fruits as grow from our graves, and find the pain that mirrors mine, some comfort to express the years of our demise. Let us walk together a while among the leaves, that eternal fall within the wasteland. I wish to hear your tale of times before my hand lay in waiting on the other side. Here there are no goodbyes, and tomorrow never rises. Let us walk for today through this sigh amid the branches, forever and anon to lose our yesterdays, until no one remembers when we walked below the mortal sky.
Do you recall the mindset, or can you share with me the process of writing that one?
Yeah, that poem, that's actually new. I added 20 additional poems to the first book when my publisher accepted it, and that one's actually one of the 20 that I added. The second half of the book takes place in the underworld, and he meets someone there. The narrator meets somebody there. He, she, or they, however you want to put it. I try not to get gender specific with my narrators when I'm writing poetry, or who or what gender they're speaking about. I like to try to maintain a level of universality to where anybody can read it and understand it. But that's the one, to my mind, when our narrator meets the person on the other side.
Okay, is that a turning point in the book? And was that
It's the second part is the whole second part is essentially a turning point in the book.
okay?
Yeah, that's where the narrative really shifts from infidelity. I mean, the whole thing is about infidelity, but it really shifts from infidelity to a more kind of macabre innocence love story type thing that takes place in the underworld.
And how long had this project taken, start to finish?
From start to finish, I started writing the first book last year, sometime in the spring, and I finished writing the whole trilogy around February of 2022 of this year.
Okay, and I know we talked about it before, but how quickly, or how quickly, I guess, did you find a publisher for this one?
I sold it to the first place that I sent it to.
Was that the quickest success you've had as a
Oh
publisher?
yeah, that was the quickest acceptance letter I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unheard of. I am a fraction of a percentage of writers that can say the first place they sent a manuscript to, much less 3 manuscripts, said yes.
Well, good for you.
This one's called The Lost Season, which is actually the poem that follows It's All Over. Winds forgotten have sailed before, past the threshold of this season's door. Was that the blush of a summer longing to be, whose fruits and flowers none now shall see? What rays may have warmed thy dead face? What leaves now green could hope to trace the reply of the rose to the seabird's call in skies of an autumn never to fall? What dies beside us in the dark, or what seas do our shades embark? It would be as though we never died, if our hearts were the stars which guide from troubled shores to sights unseen, beyond the veil which lies between seasons which were and which shall not pass, for earth below has withered, alas. The anguish of our hearts aligned, shadows kiss the sun we left behind, the sweetest poison within this tear, as, in sorrow, the clouds have gathered here, shall be the thunder and the wine, that we may drink these tears of thine and rejoice, for there is no tomorrow, save for the void and our sorrow.
What can you tell me about that one?
A little bit inspired, without deliberately plagiarizing. I don't think that it's plagiarism that I did this, because especially since I'm going to tell people that I did the line "the summer longing to be" was inspired by a line called "A Summer to Be" in a poem called "A Forsaken Garden" by one of my favorites poets, one of my greatest literary influences, Algernon Charles Swinburne. I have written many, many, many versions of A Forsaken Garden and have tried to make it half as good as that poem. And I think that one's the one that comes the closest being about half as good as Swinburne's poem.
Okay.
So, but that one was largely inspired by Algernon Charles Swinburne. Pretty much every collection I've written since reading The Forsaken Garden has my own version of A Forsaken Garden somewhere in there. I've written many of my own versions of that poem in an attempt to try to reach that same level, you know. So I don't know if I've succeeded or not. I think that's up to the readers to determine. But another thing, the line "for earth below has withered, alas," that's a Robin Trower reference. Robin Trower is a British blues guitarist from way back in the 1960s to the 70s to the present. Every one of my books, whether it's a poetry collection or a work of prose, has some kind of Robin Trower reference hidden in it. And the reason for that is because I got into Robin Trower when I was 15 years old. I got one of his CDs called "Someday Blues." It's not his most famous album, but it's a good blues album. And it had a PO box address on the back to send him fan mail, and I sent him fan mail, and he responded. So I have a signed letter from Robin Trower, plus a signed ticket from when I saw him live in 2009. So every single one of my books, whether it's poetry, prose, doesn't matter what it is, it has some kind of Robin Trower reference hidden somewhere.
Is he still around?
Oh yeah, he's still around. He just released a new album shortly after the pandemic really stopped, kind of fizzled out a little bit. But he's not touring right now. He's almost 80 years old. He doesn't want to risk it, you know. But sure. he's been a constant source of inspiration for me since I was 15 years old. I mean, for example, I loved Pink Floyd. I still love Pink Floyd, but when I got into Robin Trower, I kind of forgot Pink Floyd for a couple of years. This last poem was a practice run because I have just started working on a fourth collection. But this was a practice run to get ready to start writing that fourth collection. It's called "Hopelessness." I want to know what it is like to live inside your eyes without terrifying your heart. I want to be in the seat beside you and feel like I am someone else, somebody you would not hurt the way I deserve, in the way that I would beg you to stay where I do not belong, knives in my design, and your own blame for my guilt. I want to dance with you in my mind. Yes, I dare entertain the delusion that I never would push you away. Are you afraid of me? With the shackles of my heartbeat wrapped around my need for you, would you notice me leaving in the same way the world would end if you were not here tomorrow and I could not follow you? An angel with demon wings, with bullets in his brow, offered me the shelter of sorrow, where the sun does not belong, the way it shines on you. I dare not watch from the shadows to keep you miles away from danger, while the angel weeps tears of steel in the poison field of hopelessness, whose flowers I would gather for you, if only you would notice me leave, the same way the sun would die if tomorrow rose without you and I could not follow.
And how recently was that written?
That was written like 3 days ago.
3 days. Okay.
So like I said, I don't want to like use you as a guinea pig for a new piece. It's just I felt confident in that one though. I didn't feel as confident in the other one.
Sure. Well, tell me about the inspirations for that one.
I don't know. It's not about anybody in particular. I just wanted to write a love song, and because I'm really good at that. I am good at writing love pieces. That's what I'm really good at. Maybe I had somebody in mind on a subconscious level, but to my mind, it's just fearing that you're going to get hurt, but wanting to get hurt at the same time because you feel like that's what you deserve, kind of thing. if that makes any sense, because that's the way I've been for a number of years. I think that's why my last relationship lasted so long, because I was like, well, this is what I deserve.
Remind the listeners if you can. Do you have planned release dates for all three parts?
No, January 19th is the only release date that I have. I'm pushing, the second book comes out in April. I'm pushing for April 5th because, and we're going to make a callback here. That's Algernon Swinburne's birthday. January 19th is Edgar Allan Poe's birthday. So I'd like to release the books, the first two books on those days.
Okay.
It's also my cat's birthday.
Well
And
noted.
he's down here right now. He's really curious about what I'm doing. But I'm looking at August 10th for the third book because that's my mother's birthday.
Okay.
So yeah, again, it does come out in August, and I thought that'd be the right. I had to talk to my publisher about that though before I really do it. I don't want to make those the official release dates or anything, but those are the dates that I'm looking for the two other books.
And where will these be available?
Amazon is the first place you would want to look, and then they'll be available as well in bookstores all throughout the world. I'm not sure if it'll be like Barnes and Noble and places like that, but they will be available in bookstores. Okay, well, this is called The Lamb. I wrote it 4 days ago. It is nearly midnight. I might as well say that it is midnight. I am positive it will be past midnight by the time I finish writing this. On nights when I stay up this late, I sometimes worry that I am becoming manic again. Not a safe mania, but a dangerous mania that can lead to psychosis. Much like the psychosis of one I wrote in Ibis in the Sun, which I mentioned in the previous post, and then I shared the link to Ibis. I wrote Ibis while suffering a psychotic state, but that wasn't my first psychosis. No, the first psychosis had come 6 months after witnessing my father's suicide by intentional heroin overdose. I left my home in Spokane, Washington, and went to Auburn, Washington, a little town some 40 or 45 minutes outside of Seattle. Before going to Seattle, I had been given some psych meds from Spokane Mental Health. Let me tell you about these assholes. Spokane Mental Health is the worst mental health facility I've ever been to. They will only treat you for 6 months. They only give you medicine for 6 months, and then they will throw you out with no medication and no plan. They let me stay for a full year due to the fact that my schizoaffective disorder was just beginning to manifest itself. I had put myself in a voluntary stay at a local institution, so Spokane Mental Health made the reluctant exception to the rule and gave me an extra 6 months of service. When, on April 1st of 2013, I moved in with my mother in Auburn, I had a 1 month supply of pills with no refills. 3 months later, I was in the hospital suffering my first psychotic episode. They sent me to an institution, the name of which I will not share in order to preserve the privacy of the patients who are there today. It's not that I feel anyone might go there snooping around. I just think it is best to leave the name out of it. I do not know why I began thinking of an Ibis in the Sun, but whenever I think of it, I think of Ploy, the protagonist, and his love interest, Heinrich. Heinrich is based on a person who I met at the institution in Seattle. I do not remember his name. He gave me his name in the form of a bracelet, but I no longer own the bracelet. I used to have everything that this kid gave me in a little folder, along with everything else that I accumulated during that first institutionalization. But I lost all of it after the second psychosis when Ibis was written. As a little side note here, when you are in a mental institution, the orderlies and doctors follow you around with clipboards, writing down everything you say or do. If you ask them what they are writing down, they smile at you and say they aren't writing anything. They're writing fucking something. If you are under constant scrutiny. If you spend too long in the shower or bathroom, they open the door and check in on you, taking their little notes the whole time. When you've just suffered a psychological collapse as a result of a schizotypal disorder, this kind of thing is the opposite of helpful. Apart from the fact that it is human rights, that is one of the many reasons why I feel that transgender people should be permitted to use the bathroom of their choice, because I know what it is like to be scared of going to the bathroom. Anyway, Heinrich in the book was a mathematical genius. This was an accident. I believed in my cray state that the kid in the institution was handing me equations that he had written on pieces of paper. In reality, he had been giving me his phone number on different pieces of paper throughout my stay in the East Ward, where they kept the severe cases that were not violent in any way. He would give me his phone number every now and then. I only heard him speak once, but apparently he did speak with the orderlies and doctors in some capacity, for he asked to be moved to the second bed in my room. Whether he expressed this verbally or in writing, I do not know. I remember the kid's parents showing up at the sanatorium, and he just walked away from them in his own world. The orderly told his parents that he was having some moments of lucidity that were few and far between. So I was lying in bed just now trying to sleep, and sleep became impossible as I thought of that poor kid from the first of my two meltdowns. I wonder where he is now. I wonder if he even is alive. Did he ever escape his own mind and become completely lucid? Well, as fate would have it, no, not that kind of fate having it. There is no happy ending to this story. I attempted to commit suicide less than a month after my release from the institution. I told them to put me back in the same asylum where I had been previously because they let you smoke cigarettes there. The only bed they had available was in the severe cases ward, the North Ward, the one where they kept people who could potentially be dangerous, either to themselves or to others. I remember meeting someone who thought he was God. He told me, respect your body because it is mine. And guess who was there as well? I do not know why he was there. He must have exhibited some sort of behavior that led him to the North Ward. But he was very happy to see me. He started laughing and smiling when he saw me, and the orderlies didn't know what to do. He had not smiled or laughed the entire time he had been there. Once again, I was receiving notes from this poor soul. I remember one of them verbatim. It ran, "What I want, good music, friendship, a joint." There are other lists that he would give me, and I regret letting go of those things. It has been 6 years since I lost my mind the second time and lost all of those notes and the many, many odd versions of his phone number that he had given to me. He was not a smoker, but he would take a cigarette from the community cigarette cup whenever I went outside to smoke. He would sit close to me, but not right by me. The nurses would yell at him for not inhaling and force him to go back inside, leaving his cigarette unfinished. One day I heard him speak. He wanted to go outside for another cigarette, and the nurse would not let him. She threatened to put him in solitary. That's not what they call it, but that is what it is, if he kept trying to go outside. The words he said were, "I'm bored." Those are the only words I ever heard him speak. "I'm bored." Shortly before leaving the North Ward, I received a present from someone. A blue sweater appeared at the foot of my bed one morning when I woke up. It was the same blue sweater that I had seen him wearing on several occasions. I took it and hid it so that the staff would not take it away. The last time I saw him, he offered me a smile and a wink, a nonverbal message of some sort about the shirt he had given me. I no longer own the shirt. I lost it, and I cannot tell you how much that upsets me as I sit here writing this. Again, I wonder where he is, if he even is alive, or if he wound up with a life sentence at stake, which was the fate of a great deal of the people on that ward. I was only there for 4 days before they moved me to Central, where people were closer to recovery. It was a safer environment for me because I was not sick anymore. I was just suicidal. I probably would have remained on that ward had I not put myself in on a voluntary stay. The doctors worried that I would try to commit suicide again, but once I spoke with them, they let me go home 2 days later. I never saw that hospital or that kid again. If I could go back in time, I would have tried to call that number that he gave me in so many bizarre ways, ways that looked like equations. But I think I know there will be nobody on the other side. I dedicated An Ibis in the Sun to several people when I wrote it. But if ever it is released in a professional, traditional manner, I know who I would dedicate that edition to. I just wonder what became of him. It is now nearly 12:30 in the morning, and I am not tired. I do not believe this is mania, just a bit of a sad moment as I think of the past and wonder what became of the lamb. I remember very vividly the writing process of that book. I would stop in the middle of a sentence and make like 6 illustrations and then incorporate them into the story, and then just pick up right where I left off. I still see colors when I close my eyes because of that. When I close my eyes before I go to bed at night, I still see shit that I was seeing when I was working on that book. That's when that whole thing started for me. I see geometric patterns, I see faces, I see all sorts of stuff when I close my eyes. Ever since I wrote that book, it completely damaged me. And that's why I can't read it. I can't read that.
That was 7 years ago?
That was 7 years ago. I still can't read it. I had a copy in the house that I got rid of really quick. I didn't even want it in the house.
Is it available for sale still?
It's available for sale. It's on Amazon. I would like to find a professional publisher for it, but at the same time, I'm worried they would want to edit it, and I don't know what grammatical and punctuation and spelling errors were intentional and what were not. Okay. So there's no way it could be edited without ruining the entire story.
And then Brother of Death. I know that was written more recently.
Yeah, that was written back in, I want to say July of this year, July or August, something like that.
The Lamb. Having read it, having gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, it certainly is reminiscent of at least the beginning of that book. Yeah. Tell me how you developed the idea for the I forget the institute, the
Fairfax. Or are you talking about the camp?
Well, both, I guess. Fairfax and the camp. How did those ideas develop? I mean, was Fairfax?
It was around the 6-year anniversary of the last breakdown, which was also around the 9-year anniversary of the first meltdown, because they both happened in July. It's funny. They almost 3 years to the day after that first meltdown, I was melting down again. So it's funny. It's not funny or anything, but I mean, it is kind of funny. I mean, both times were in July and August. So, but where was I going with this? So I knew I wanted to write something that took place in a mental institution, just to kind of get that anniversary anxiety out of the way, because you do get anniversary anxiety about that kind of stuff. So I wanted to get it out of the way. So I thought, well, this could take place in a mental institution. And that was the saving grace of Brother Death, because I didn't know what to do with it. I had the idea of fatal sleep deprivation, but I didn't know what else to do. And the whole story just fell into place the instant that I thought put it in a mental institution. So I'm not sure what the camp was based on, but I know Fairfax was based on my time in both the Washington institution and the one here where I currently live.
Was there any correlation, do you think, between the camp and the facility in Stephen King's, I believe it's called The Institute?
The Institute was actually a book that I had just I was reading, and I had finished reading. I think the camp was a little inspired by Stephen King's The Institute, actually. I think it was, just not as horrific. Or maybe it is as horrific. I don't know. but it was, that was actually one of the things that made me decide, okay, go ahead with the mental institution idea, was when I was reading The Institute.
Yeah, I never did finish it. I'm about halfway through and set it aside.
It's a really scary book. I think it scared me almost as much as Pet Sematary. But I don't think that I ripped off Stephen King by creating the camp and everything. It's just that when I was reading The Institute, I decided right there when I was reading it, I'm like, go with the mental institution idea, because I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. And while I was reading The Institute, I'm like, go with that, do the mental institution.
Sure. And of course, this project is looking desperately for a publisher.
Yeah, it is. I've stopped looking for a publisher until the first book comes out on January 19th, in the hopes that I'll get lucky again and someone will approach me. but I don't, at the same time, I don't want to keep sending it out to agencies looking for a publisher until the book comes out, so that I have that publication under my belt. At least I'll have a book out. Instead of saying this book's coming out next year, the book will be available. Because in my query letters for Brother of Death so far, I've said, yeah, the trilogy's coming out next year. I haven't said, oh, the first book is out and it's doing such and such. I can't do that right now because it hasn't been released yet. So that's another reason why I kind of stopped sending out queries, was to wait and see if having a published book out there, will make a difference.
Well, I do wish you the very best of luck. I'm very glad to see you sitting here talking with me after having written these things and experienced what you did.
Oh, thank you.
but
Yeah, it's been a trip. I mean, the last 10 years have not been fun, but it started with Dad's suicide when I want to say 24 years old and 23 or 24 years old. It was back in 2013. So I would have been about 24 when he died. And that anniversary is coming up on January 26th. That's another reason why I'm really excited. The first book's coming out on January 19th. Part of me wanted to release it on the 26th, but I thought that'd be kind of in bad taste. But yeah, the next collection is very heavy, with the 10-year anniversary. The fourth book is very heavily centered around that subject.
and is this fourth book another book of poetry, or are you?
It's a book of poetry. Yeah, it's another poetry collection. I don't tend to write novels until summertime. And I know that's probably weird, but I find winter is my favorite season. It's when I get my best poetical work done. I do write poetry all year long, but I tend to slack on it a little bit in the late spring through the summer, and that's usually when I write a novel. As you know, that we spoke in the last podcast, I've got an idea for a novel now, but I'm sitting on it until summer. That's not procrastination. It's just I know I'm not going to get it done until summer.
Sure.
If I'm going to write it, it's going to have to be in the summertime.
I do look forward to updates. That's I think about the extent of what I had to ask.
Okay.
Throw this all together, and I'll throw links on your Facebook if you can ever see it again. When do you do out of jail?
I think January 7th is when I'll be out.
Okay.
So right in time to start really promoting the first book.
Sure.
I'm so busy on DeviantArt and Twitter and Tumblr and other social media outlets right now, just trying to pump the first book. But I'm worried that without a proper pump on bump or whatever you want to call it on Facebook, I'm missing out on advertising by being in jail. But I fucking knew this was going to happen too. I just knew it.
Well, again, in the meantime, I do wish you the very best of luck with everything, and I look forward to updates as soon as you can share them.
Of course, as soon as I can share them. Yeah, January 7th. I'm only going to be using Facebook for advertising from now on. If people want to read philosophy, psychology, and humor, they can go to my DeviantArt.
Sure.
All right. Talk to you later, friend.
That was good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.